We met through mutual friends at a housewarming party. It wasn't one of those movie moments, just two people standing near the same bowl of chips, making awkward small talk. But somehow, that turned into us sharing a drink, then finding a quieter corner of the room where the conversation just flowed. She had this calm confidence that drew me in. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was just herself, sharp, funny, grounded. We went out for dinner a week later. Nothing fancy, just a neighborhood bistro with string lights and good wine. But I remember how she talked passionately, thoughtfully about her job in PR, about her favorite podcasts, about how she couldn't stand pineapple on pizza but ordered it anyway if she was trying to look adventurous. I liked her instantly. I liked the way she looked at people when they talked, like she was actually listening. From there, it moved quickly in the best way. We saw each other nearly every weekend, then every day. She'd come over with takeout and stay the night, then the weekend, then eventually, it just made sense for her to move in. Life with her felt like an easy rhythm, shared meals, shared bills, shared mornings that started with coffee and ended with her stealing all the covers. We got married 3 years later in a simple outdoor ceremony. Nothing showy, just close friends, family, and a lot of laughter. We bought a house not long after that, a modest place in a quiet neighborhood, the kind with weekend garage sales and kids playing basketball in driveways. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Danielle made the place feel like a home almost immediately. She had an eye for color, for texture, for making a space feel alive. I handled the yard work, the repairs, the grocery runs. She handled the decor, the schedules, the little moments that turned regular days into memories. Evenings were often quiet. She'd curl up with a book or catch up on emails while I unwound with a show or took care of things for my business. But we always had dinner together, no phones, no distractions. We talked about work, about plans for the future, about everything and nothing. Looking back now, those days felt full. Simple, yes, but steady. We had a rhythm, a home, and what I thought was a foundation built on trust and partnership. For a long time, that was enough. That was everything. Life with Danielle settled into something I used to consider close to perfect. After the wedding, everything seemed to fall into place with an ease that made me believe we were just right. We moved into a 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburb not far from the city. It had a little backyard, a sunlit kitchen, and just enough space to feel like we were starting a chapter of real adulthood. Danielle turned the house into a home almost immediately. She had this uncanny ability to bring warmth into a room without trying too hard. Soft lighting, a few plants, pictures from our travels, subtle pops of color that turned bland walls into something inviting. I handled most of the maintenance, the gutters, the lawn, the stuff that keeps the place from falling apart. We were a team, even when it came to the most mundane chores. She'd fold laundry while I cooked dinner. On Sundays, we'd grocery shop together and plan our meals for the week. Small things, but they added up to a life that felt full. Work-wise, we were both steady. She thrived in PR, smart, organized, the kind of person who could win people over in 5 minutes flat. I ran my own IT consulting firm. It gave me a little more flexibility than most jobs, and I liked being my own boss. Some months were better than others, but I was proud of what I'd built. Danielle always supported it, even during the long nights when I had to troubleshoot server issues or field late calls from stressed clients. Weekends were our time. We weren't huge party people, but we liked hosting dinner nights with friends. Danielle would go all out with the setup, candles, table settings, background playlists, and I'd be in the kitchen working on some overly ambitious meal. Our friends used to joke that we were that couple, the ones who actually liked spending time together. And honestly, I believed them. I believed we had something that worked. We vacationed once a year, even if it was just a long weekend upstate or a few days at the coast. Danielle loved the ocean, said she slept best with the windows open and the sound of waves in the distance. I loved seeing her relaxed, reading on the balcony or making sandcastles with the kids who wandered nearby. She had that kind of warmth with people, especially kids, that always made me think she'd be an incredible mother someday. We talked about starting a family. Not immediately, but we both agreed it was part of the plan. She even had a name she loved for a girl, one she'd kept since she was a teenager. I still remember how her eyes lit up the first time she said it aloud. We had dreams. Shared ones. We had a life with roots. And I was all in. Everything looked the way it should have. Everything felt right. And for a long time, I didn't question a thing. By our 3rd year of marriage, everything in our life had found a comfortable rhythm. We weren't newlyweds anymore, but we hadn't settled into monotony either. There was still laughter in the kitchen while we cooked together, still those quiet Sunday mornings spent reading the paper or watching reruns on the couch. Danielle liked to keep busy. She'd start her mornings with a podcast and a to-do list, and I was the steady hand, the one who kept our calendars sane and our bills paid on time. We'd talk every night before bed. It didn't matter how tired we were, it had become a habit. Sometimes it was about something big, career moves, maybe a house project, or talk of maybe starting to try for a baby next year. Other nights, it was just a debrief of the day, funny stories, random dreams. That's what I appreciated most, how easy it was to just be with her. My family was a regular part of our life, too. Sunday dinners at my parents' place were a standing tradition. Danielle got along well with them, especially with my mom, who always insisted she was too pretty and too smart for someone like me, but in a teasing way. My younger brother, Chris, was around a lot, too. He worked for me, had for about a year and a half at that point. It wasn't anything glamorous, mostly operations and admin support, but it gave him steady work and gave me peace of mind knowing I could trust him. He and Danielle always got along almost too easily, to be honest. She liked to joke that he was the fun brother, the one who actually enjoyed going out and doing new things while I was happy to stay in and read or work late. I never thought much of it. It was all lighthearted, and Chris was my brother, my little brother. I'd watched out for him our whole lives. When he hit a rough patch a few years back, I was the one who helped him get back on his feet. Danielle had supported the idea of bringing him into the business. She said it made sense, and I agreed. Looking back now, I can see how close things felt. How seamless. How safe. There was no drama, no raised voices, no serious fights. We were in sync. We planned trips, talked about renovations, dreamt about someday maybe relocating closer to the coast once the business stabilized. I felt proud of the life we were building. We had a shared bank account, a joint calendar, a dog that adored us both. We had routines that worked. And we had love, at least, I thought we did. It's strange how, in the moment, you never expect anything to fall apart. Not when everything looks like it's in its place. Not when you're too close to see what's quietly unraveling just beyond your view. It wasn't one big thing. It never is. Just a series of tiny shifts, the kind you only notice when you're used to someone's rhythm and suddenly they're dancing offbeat. Danielle started staying up later than usual. She used to be the one nudging me to bed by 10:30, lights out, no excuses. Now she'd say she had work to finish or a client call in a different time zone. At first, I didn't question it. She was ambitious, driven, that had always been part of what I loved about her. But something about her energy changed. She was more distracted during dinner, half listening, checking her phone when she thought I wasn't watching. The phone itself was a big shift, too. She used to leave it face up on the counter. Now it was always screened down or tucked away. And the password changed, which she casually explained away as a new work policy. I didn't argue, but I noticed. The real tipping point came one night when I came home early from a client meeting. Danielle wasn't expecting me. I walked in through the front door and heard music from upstairs, low, something with a slow beat I didn't recognize. When I got to the bedroom, she was on the phone, voice low, pacing barefoot by the window. When she saw me, she startled. Just a flicker, but enough. She ended the call quickly. "Hey, you're home early," she said with that too bright smile. "Just catching up with a client about an event launch. They've been driving me crazy." I nodded. "Didn't sound like work," I said lightly, testing the waters. She laughed. "It never does. You know how I talk to people, keeps them relaxed." She walked over and kissed my cheek, a gesture that felt rehearsed. I didn't push. I didn't want to become the paranoid husband. But from that moment on, something settled into my gut, and it didn't go away. I started noticing how she'd change her clothes before leaving for these client meetings. She'd wear perfume, something she never did unless it was a big event or a date night. She'd linger in front of the mirror longer, adjusting her hair, checking her reflection more than once. I'd comment on it jokingly, "Big night." And she'd roll her eyes, say, "You always think I'm trying to impress someone. It's just work." Chris started hanging around more too, always with some reason to stop by after hours. A delivery from the office. A quick favor. A beer in the fridge. He and Danielle would chat easily in the kitchen while I cleaned up after dinner. I didn't think much of it. Why would I? They were comfortable, sure, but nothing alarming. Still, I found myself looking at her a little differently, listening more closely, watching for details I didn't used to track. Not because I knew anything, just because something didn't feel right anymore. And I couldn't figure out why. I stopped feeling comfortable in my own house. Not in an obvious, dramatic way, but in that subtle, unsettling kind of way where the air feels heavier, conversations feel thinner, and every interaction seems just a little too practiced. Danielle was still warm, still affectionate, but the timing of it felt off. Like she was trying to prove something rather than simply be present with me. It was small things at first. She'd be in the middle of texting, and when I walked into the room, she'd lock her phone and flip it over. She used to narrate her life out loud, telling me when she was heading to the store, or venting about a difficult client, but now there were pockets of her day I just didn't hear about. And when I'd ask how her day went, I'd get vague, surface-level answers. Busy, but fine. Long meetings. Just exhausted. No details, no stories. I'd chalked it up to stress at first. Maybe she was just burned out. Maybe the spark we had early on was dimming in a way all long-term couples eventually face. But something inside me didn't buy it. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was mentally somewhere else, emotionally already 1 foot out the door. Chris kept coming around, always with a good reason. He'd drop by to talk work, bring over something he forgot at the office, or ask Danielle some question about weekend plans while I was in another room. Again, nothing overtly suspicious. He was my brother. We'd always had a loose, casual kind of bond, and Danielle had been close with him from the beginning. But something about how easy they were with each other started to grate on me. I'd catch them sharing private looks, nothing dramatic, just quick glances that ended the second I walked in. Once, I overheard them laughing in the kitchen when I came back from walking the dog. The laughter died quickly when I entered. Danielle brushed past me, saying they were just reminiscing about some silly story Chris had told her from work. But I hadn't heard him mention anything funny. He barely spoke when we were alone. At night, I'd lie in bed next to her while she scrolled through her phone. She'd smile at the screen, sometimes laugh quietly, then set it down and roll over without a word. I'd stare at the ceiling, wondering if I was imagining things, if I was letting paranoia chip away at my peace. But even the most grounded instincts can't ignore what they're sensing forever. I didn't accuse. I didn't confront. I didn't want to start a fight over feelings I couldn't articulate. But something wasn't right. I knew that much. It was like the foundation of our marriage, something I once believed was solid, had developed a hairline fracture. I couldn't see it clearly, couldn't prove it existed, but I felt it every time I stepped through the door. And it was growing. That summer, everything that used to feel simple between us became layered in second guesses. Danielle and I still shared the same bed, the same routines, the same house, but it felt more and more like I was living with someone whose world I no longer had access to. She was pleasant enough, still kind when she spoke, but her attention drifted more often than not. She was in the room, but never with me. Our conversations became transactional. Can you grab milk on the way home? Don't forget your mom's birthday this weekend. I'll be late tonight. Big pitch tomorrow. All surface, no soul. I stopped hearing her laugh the way she used to. I stopped seeing her smile when we'd bump into each other at the kitchen counter in the morning. It was the contrast that got to me most, the difference between now and a few months earlier. Danielle used to light up when she saw me. We used to sit close on the couch, watch shows together, eat off each other's plates. Now, I couldn't remember the last time we touched without it feeling premeditated. She'd still kiss me goodbye in the mornings, but it was routine, quick, automatic, and hollow. She stopped asking how my day was. Stopped remembering the names of clients I'd talk about. Stopped offering to help when I vented about things that were piling up at work. And Chris, well, Chris seemed to be around whenever she was happiest. His name popped up more in casual conversation. She'd mention a funny story from work, and he'd somehow always be part of it. Once, I came home early to find the two of them out back, drinks in hand, listening to some playlist she'd made. I asked what the occasion was. Danielle smiled and said, just decompressing. We both had long days. Her voice was breezy, light, and I tried to mirror it, but something in my chest twisted all the same. What really started eating at me, though, were the gaps. The unexplained moments. Danielle began leaving the house without saying where she was going. Or she'd give vague responses when I asked. Out running errands. Or had to drop something off at the office. Sometimes she'd say she was with one of her girlfriends. But when I'd casually ask how it went or what they talked about, she'd say, oh, nothing much, and pivot the conversation somewhere else. She was avoiding depth, dodging connection, and I knew it. I felt it in my bones. There were nights I lay awake, staring at the ceiling while she snored softly beside me, wondering if I was going insane, if I was imagining the distance, if I was being unfair. I ran through the usual self-talk, relationships change, People go through phases. Work can be overwhelming. But then I'd remember the little things. The locked phone. The late nights. The overdone explanations. The way she was always just out of reach. And Chris. Always Chris. His smile a little too quick. His stories a little too smooth. His presence lingering just a little too long after he said he was leaving. I didn't want to be suspicious. I didn't want to believe anything was happening. But by now, the tension wasn't just under the surface, it was creeping into every corner of my life. I was distracted at work, snapping more than usual, checking her social media for any sign, any crack in the image she carefully kept up. I wasn't ready to admit it out loud. But deep down, I knew something was unraveling, and I couldn't stop it. I reached my limit the night Danielle said she had an overnight work event and left in a rush, barely touching the dinner I'd made. She didn't say where. Didn't say who would be there. Just packed a small bag, gave me a peck on the cheek, and was out the door before I could get out more than it need me to walk you out. She used to at least pretend to explain things. Now, she didn't even try. That night, I sat in our living room alone, lights off, dinner cold on the table. I stared at the front door for longer than I care to admit. Something inside me broke, not from rage, but from the quiet weight of everything that hadn't been said. I wasn't a man given to dramatics. But I wasn't naive either. I'd ignored the shift in her behavior, justified the way her presence had turned into absence. I convinced myself it was a rough patch. But when you stop recognizing the person you share a home with, you stop pretending everything's fine. The next morning, I did something I never thought I'd do. I bought a pair of hidden cameras. Not the clunky, obvious kind. These were discreet, motion-triggered, cloud-connected. I told myself it was about peace of mind, about proving myself wrong. That maybe I was just being paranoid. But somewhere in me, I knew better. I set them up with care, one in the hallway facing our bedroom door, one subtly angled toward the bed. I hid the tiny router in my office drawer, behind books I knew Danielle would never touch. The installation made my stomach turn. I hated myself a little. For invading her privacy. For thinking I needed to. For letting it come to this. But I'd reached a point where not knowing felt worse than discovering the worst. She didn't notice. She was barely home anyway. That week, things seemed almost normal on the surface. Danielle smiled more. Made plans for dinner one night. Even brought home a bottle of wine we used to drink when we were dating. But the warmth didn't last. Her phone still never left her side. Her excuses stayed vague. And Chris? He showed up again 2 nights in a row, with no real reason beyond, just swinging by. They were careful, at least. I think they were trying to be. I never saw anything explicit. No stolen kisses. No whispers I could catch. But every time I saw them in the same room, my skin prickled. I felt like I was watching a version of my life that was happening without me. I checked the footage at night, quietly, while Danielle showered or went on one of her long evening walks. I told myself it was about ruling things out, that I'd watch for a few days and then remove them. But each night, I found myself going to the footage like a man visiting an old wound, still hoping not to see blood. So far, nothing. Just her folding laundry, reading, walking past the camera in a towel. But the tension didn't ease. Because even if I couldn't see it yet, something was there. Waiting. It was a Wednesday when I finally saw it. Danielle had told me she'd be working late. Said something about a last-minute campaign revision that had to be turned in by morning. Her words were rushed, like she was repeating a script. She didn't kiss me goodbye, just grabbed her bag and left, leaving the front door half open behind her. I closed it for her, slowly. Something about that small carelessness stuck with me more than I realized at the time. That night, I made dinner for myself, took the dog out, tried to keep busy. But I kept glancing at my phone, waiting for the notification that the motion sensor in the hallway had picked something up. Hours passed. Nothing. Until 9:47 p.m. The alert came through just as I was getting ready for bed. I clicked into the live feed and stared. There they were. Danielle and Chris. Walking into our bedroom like they owned the place. She wasn't dressed like she'd come from work, tight jeans, heels, hair done just so. He looked casual, comfortable. Not a visitor, but someone who knew exactly where to step, where to pause, where to put his hands. My chest tightened as I watched them. At first, they stood near the bed, close but not touching. Then she laughed, quietly, and leaned in. And that's when it happened. She reached up, touched his cheek, and he kissed her. Not a hesitant kiss. Not a mistake. A full, slow, deliberate kiss. She kissed him back like she'd done it before. The blanket of numbness that followed was worse than rage. My hands went cold. My ears started ringing. I kept watching, part of me hoping it would stop there, that maybe it was a moment of weakness and nothing more. But then she pulled him toward the bed, and everything else confirmed what I already couldn't unsee. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I closed the app, grabbed my keys, and walked out the door. The drive home, our home, was a blur. I didn't care if they saw me coming. I didn't care what I'd say. I just needed to be there, to look them in the eyes and see if they'd try to lie to me face to face. When I pulled into the driveway, their cars were still there. I unlocked the front door, walked in, and headed straight upstairs. I didn't slow down. I threw open the bedroom door. They froze. Danielle was sitting up, the sheet pulled across her chest. Chris scrambled to grab his clothes off the floor. Both of them looked like children caught sneaking candy from the pantry, stupid, wide-eyed, stunned. "Wait," Danielle stammered, her voice high and panicked. "This isn't." "Don't," I cut her off. Chris opened his mouth, but I didn't let him speak either. "Out," I said. "Both of you." "Now." She started to protest, to explain, to make something up. I don't know. But I didn't care. The camera didn't lie, and I didn't need to hear anything else. "They didn't leave right away," Danielle begged. Not loudly, not with screaming or tears, but with that calm, manipulative voice she used when she wanted to rewrite reality. "You don't understand what's been going on," she said, sheets still clutched around her like it could shield her from the truth. It wasn't supposed to happen. We were just talking, and one thing led to another." "Don't," I said again, quietly but firmly, cutting her off. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. My silence was louder than anything I could have screamed. I turned to Chris, who couldn't meet my eyes, and pointed to the door. "Get out. Now." He grabbed his jeans, his phone, avoided looking at me. Danielle was slower. She sat there, trying to gauge if there was still a thread left to pull, something she could spin. But when she saw I wasn't breaking, she stood, gathered her clothes, and followed him out of the room without another word. I heard them muttering downstairs, the front door closing, footsteps fading. I didn't move. I just stood in the doorway, staring at the space where they had been, breathing through a fury that didn't need flames to burn. The next day, I went to the office early. Chris showed up like he had no idea the world had shifted. I didn't let him sit. I didn't let him speak. I called him into my office, told him he was done, terminated immediately, with no severance. He tried to argue. I reminded him that I owned the company and didn't owe him an explanation after what he did in my home, in my bed, with my wife. The look on his face wasn't anger, it was panic. Like he thought I'd let it go. Like he believed this was salvageable. It wasn't. Then came the house. Danielle tried to call. I didn't pick up. She texted me nonstop for days. At first, it was denial, telling me I was overreacting, that it was a mistake. Then came the guilt tactics. "You don't understand how lonely I've been. I only did this because I thought you didn't love me the same anymore." Then came the desperation. "Please talk to me. I need to explain. I didn't mean for this to happen." But I didn't respond. Not once. She had crossed a line you don't come back from. I changed the locks that same day. She came back to find the door wouldn't open, her key no longer valid. I watched from the upstairs window as she stood there, confused at first, then panicked, then angry. She banged on the door. Called me. Left voicemails. I didn't move. I didn't say a word. She left eventually, maybe to go cry to her sister, maybe back to Chris. I don't care. I packed her things, dropped them at her friend's place, and sent her one final text. "Everything's gone. Don't come back." I closed our joint bank account. Took the car she'd been driving, it was in my name. She didn't fight me for it. I think she knew she couldn't. Her world was built on the illusion that I wouldn't push back, that I'd forgive, or that she'd charm her way back in. But I wasn't that man anymore. She tried for weeks. Emails, messages, even a letter, handwritten, left on the porch. I didn't open it. I didn't want to hear her justifications, her rewrites, her half-truths. She had chosen deceit. She had chosen betrayal. She had chosen him. Now, I chose silence. I chose to rebuild. Alone. Away from both of them. Away from every memory soaked in their lies. It took a while to breathe without bitterness. The house was too quiet at first. Her perfume still lingered in the closet. There were notes in drawers, her handwriting on sticky tabs, traces of her woven into every room. But every day, I stripped them away. Painted over colors she'd chosen. Replaced furniture she loved. Rearranged the kitchen until it felt like mine again. The silence stopped feeling heavy. It started feeling clean. I threw myself into work, restructured the company, and hired new people, people I trusted. My team noticed the change in me. I wasn't dragging my feet anymore, wasn't distracted. It was like shedding a second skin I hadn't realized I'd been wearing. I was sharper, clearer, more myself than I'd been in years. Even my parents said they hadn't seen me this present in a long time. I took up running again, something I hadn't done in years. The motion helped. It wasn't about the fitness, it was about movement, about leaving behind the heaviness of what had happened. I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes, waiting for another message from Danielle I wouldn't answer. Eventually, she stopped. The silence stretched out long enough to feel real. And then one day, I met someone. It wasn't dramatic or fast. Just a quiet moment in a cafe where I was reading, and she asked if the seat beside me was taken. Her name was Eliza. She was calm, kind, with a dry sense of humor that reminded me of who I used to be. We talked over coffee, then lunch, then walks in the park that turned into dinners. She never pried, never asked about Danielle or what had happened. She waited until I told her. And when I did, she didn't flinch. "I'm not her," she said simply. And I believed her. Being with Eliza wasn't about replacing anything. It was about starting from zero. We took her time. No rush, no pressure. I liked that she didn't fill every silence with chatter. I liked that she listened, that she let things be as they were, without needing to paint over the past. By the 6-month mark, I realized I hadn't thought about Danielle in weeks. Chris, either. Their names felt like old furniture I'd thrown out and stopped missing. Whatever fire they thought they started, it burned out fast, and I was the one who walked away without getting scorched. I don't believe in revenge anymore. It's exhausting. What I believe in now is clarity, boundaries, peace, and that you don't always get closure from the people who wronged you. Sometimes you give it to yourself, by walking away, by living better, by never looking back. I don't know what Danielle's doing now. I don't care. I've got new routines, a woman who sees me, a life that feels mine again, and that, finally, is enough. It's strange how much can change in a year. How people who once defined your everyday can become nothing more than a faint memory you no longer chase. I don't think about Danielle anymore, not the way I used to. Not with pain, not with confusion. Just quiet detachment. She made her choices, and I made mine. The fact that she chose betrayal doesn't define me anymore. What defines me now is the way I walked through that betrayal and came out the other side standing. Chris is a ghost, too. Fired from the company, cut from the family, my parents were as disgusted by what he did as I was. He tried reaching out, once. Sent me a half-hearted apology via email. I didn't reply. Some bridges burned too fast and too hot to be rebuilt. I gave him years of trust. He gave me 15 minutes of cowardice. That was the exchange. I kept going. Found strength in small victories. Cooking again without the weight of waiting for someone to come home late. Falling asleep with a book in my hands instead of questions in my head. The little things saved me, piece by piece. Eliza's still by my side. We're not rushing anything. There's a gentleness in the way she looks at life that's contagious. She doesn't try to overwrite the past. She accepts that I carry scars, and she never asks me to hide them. We've traveled a little. Talked about what we want long-term. There's no illusion here. No pedestal. Just two people building something with open eyes and steady hands. I learned a lot. That trust, once broken, is hard to glue back together. That silence is sometimes louder than words. That you can love someone and still not be blind to who they become. I learned that protecting your peace is not selfish, it's essential. I learned to stop making excuses for people who chip away at you and call it love. Mostly, I learned to listen to myself, to my gut, to the way things feel, even when everything looks right on the surface. I won't lie, there are still moments. Flickers. Like when I walk past a place we used to go, or hear a song she loved. But those moments don't own me anymore. They don't take me back. They're just echoes now. I'm not bitter. I'm not broken. I'm just a man who saw the truth, faced it, and chose to live better. And in the end, that was the best revenge I could ever ask for.